Hey people, I was reading in this book of the Orbis Pictus. This is an ancient school book, and it was written in many languages, usually one beside Latin to teach the Latin. I was trying to teach everybody how to read the Latin. The Orbis Pictus, to see first, by consume a picture, and that's how we learn. We best learn with kids is to see a picture of what you're talking about. It's almost the only way to learn a new language is to see a picture of it. So they try to destroy all these books. They said it was the devil's books, but if you go all the way to the bottom, it'll start talking about different religions, and it's easy to see that they were Christian by the way they talk about the different religions. But I was up here in geometry, and I saw in the Latin that they called this Jacob's staff a radio. And I got to thinking, well, when it's talking in the Bible, did Jacob's staff mean a radio? But this is a radio, Jacob's staff. This is a sextant, and it does the same thing. It's just it's not as good. But it's a slide rule, is what it is. It's a slide rule. This kind of like a measure, but the lines won't have equal distance because it's telling the degrees. You have a little grommet here that you look through and you eyeball this. And so it works best if you're at sea level, because you can look out in the distance at the sea and you know that you're pretty level here. And then at the top you line your star up, and it'll give you a good angle of where that star is sitting. So I looked first here in Exodus 4 in the most famous staff in the Bible. When he throws his staff down, it turns into a serpent. And answered Moses and said, "But suppose not they believe me or listen to my voice. Suppose they say not has appeared to you, Yahweh." So said to him Yahweh, "What's that in your hand?" He said. "A radio." That's my radio. That's my math. M-T-H-E. Math. And so in the Greek it's called the rod. Extend your rod. But it's not quite radio. It's R-A-B-D-O-S. Rabidos, or maybe ravidos. The B is often V in Spanish. The ravidos. And so I know that word math I recognized before, and it's usually when they're talking about the tribes. It was given the name of tribes. The math was the tribes, the 12 tribes of Israel. So it's split up. It could be a tribe or it could be your rod. So I guess the second most famous one is in number 17, when he's telling to write the name of each man on his rod, on his math. So this starts with the most common line in the Bible. Huge number of paragraphs start with the same line. "Why dibber you will most lamore." Except they would change this little tack around. Sometimes it'll be here after the dibber, sometimes it'll be after you, sometimes it'll be more than one, and it's changing the reading of it. But this dibber here, this is probably the most common word in the Bible, the dibber. And it's in the title. You see it here in Numbers, BM Dibber, Bum Dibber, and in Deuteronomy is the Dibram, D-B-R-I-M, or BM DBR, in Mudbar, or in from Dibber. So when it's in this fashion, it comes from the ancient Jewish school of turning nothing into something. And so it's to the hand, yad, id, to the hand bare. From an empty hand, you less from sell more. To the from nothing in your hand, and it's the idea of taking a shoestrings, something that costs you nothing, and using your knowledge and your gift of gab to end up with a house out of it, to keep up trading. And from the hand bare, BR, from an empty hand, and you buy knowledge, you learn, or you lease, L-A-E-S, lease, from sell more. And then it's the dibber. And so dibber is through in first. It's the begin, dibber, and then reads backwards this wall here. And so then it's rebud. The dibber, rebud, rebuttal. In Bing, backwards and forwards. In Bing is rule. So a rebuttal is a contradiction. I got your writings ain't quite right. I got a rebuttal for you. But a rebuttal is when the date's going bad on the milk, and he wants to sell it anyway, and he rebottles it with a new date on it. Or date's going bad on some medicine to rebottle. In Bing. Bing is a mark of time, just like your clock bings. Bing is 1 o'clock. Bing bing, 2 o'clock. It's a bing, B-N-J, bing. So it reads backwards, I-N, in Bing, in the mark of time, his rule. And then whiff, W-Q-H, with Matt's math. And so this is to center divide, to come after divide. H is divided, and Q is center, or to come after, meaning the middle of the wall, the side that you don't see in the center. Or it could be to fuck. You see, it's the same as in wife, except it'll have a I between the Vav and the Q. And then mats. Mats is a word usually for 100, and it's also in Egyptian. When you see a rope coiled up into a mat, it means 100 in Egyptian too. To come after, divide the hundreds, math. And so this math, it's from collect life. Well, that sounds like the math of a head hunter. You out there collecting lives, the math. So this rebottle in the time, in the mark of time, his rule, in Genesis 1, when it's talk about in divide, it always says bottle, and to divide the rows, and to divide the light, it says to bottle the rows. And so the times change as time goes on. Times change, and it has to be rebottled. So Matt's math. Love it. Empower. Empower, or house. From at, the claim is Nicaeus. As you know, Nicaeus, the Council of Nicaeus, that's where they had determined which books would go into the Bible 2,000 years ago. And this word Nicaea, it's also the beginning of the word that they give the fortune tellers, the ones that could read the stars, and the cycles, to consume, to make knowledge. And then usually M, it won't have the E, the M will be there. Nicaeum will be a fortune teller, the one that could read the stars, read the cycles. To love it, lab it, or love it. A lab, astrolab, is another tool used as a slide rule, is what it is. It's a round slide rule. And backwards starts with A, from tab, to keep tabs, to keep writings, to keep tabs on. From tab, signs as remat it, as remit it, RMTHUT, as remit what see, to keep tabs, the signs as to remit, to put in, to remit what see, reads backwards, SIA, what see to, and from, UM, and from same, what cut in, and from the same, I'm not too sure about that name, but a name would be the letters that mean the same thing as you would be your name. Connect from same, what, this last W, what cut in, KTB, cut in, to you're carving it in stone or wood. You're not writing on paper here, being cut in. All to etch, the Vav ETH, to etch, all to etch Matthew, MTHEU, Matthew. And so to etch is is to cut in, to etch it, to scratch on the side of your stick, to scratch in where the houses are, where you're labbing the houses. So if this is your first time, everything that starts with an A I'm reading backwards, and anything that comes after this tack I read it backwards and forwards. And so this is just the second time I read over this. I usually have to read the whole chapter 5 times, and sometimes 100 times is what Toph said. You have to read it before you get it. But this is what's center. I'm reading this backwards. What, first S is what, apostrophe S, what is, and then the final M is read as a S. Center, SNRE, the center at cut in. What's center at cut in? All etch math, Levi, Louis, to give the math of dollars. The one for the head is the dollars. So Dow, it means a worth. You give a dowry when you try to marry off your ugly sister. You got to come up with a dowry. The math of dollars in it, BNIT. What's center at cut in? All etch math Levi. So Levi is it looks to be just about center here, just past 6. So usually Virgo is the 6th month, but it appears to be showing a map, a chart of the precession of equinox here. So possibly when this was first written and charted, Virgo was actually the first month was in the age of Virgo. 15,000 years ago. 9,000 years before this was written. 9,000 years before this book was written. So I'll etch math, Levi, to give math the dollars in it from mate of, MTUV, the mate of. In the knots, bale from wood lipping had what raise the Dow, D-O-W-A, to raise Dow, A-L, to raise dowel, come same. In the knots, the notches carved in the knots, bale from wood, lipping, had what raise the dowel, give from same. So this looks like it's going to be an interesting chapter to read. I get clues from outside sources to help, and then I'll have to read this chapter several times, and sometimes the chapter before it or two chapters before it, before I get a better idea. But it's easy to see that a Jacob's staff is an instrument for measuring stars. And the way I read this, it probably has dual meaning. It's probably his henchmen, his staff, the president's staff. But I'll get this figured out and get a better reading on it one day. I just thought y'all might be interested in a Jacob's staff as a radio. All right, good day.